"Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to move." The words landed quietly, not loud enough to cause a scene, just loud enough to humiliate. Lydia didn't look up right away. She was helping her daughter with the zipper on her coat, the small brass one that always stuck, and she finished that first, because some things don't stop for rudeness. Then she looked up at the man standing over her table. He was tall, mid-40s maybe, the kind of man who had learned early that height in a pressed shirt could pass for authority. His name tag said Craig Ellison, Assistant General Manager. He held his hands clasped behind his back like he was waiting for something to sign. "I'm sorry," Lydia said. "This section," Craig said, with a small gesture toward the cream-colored walls, the white tablecloths, the soft pendant lights above each booth, is reserved for hotel guests and members of the Harwood Club dining program. I'll need to see your membership card or your room key." Lydia looked around. The Harwood Hotel dining room was half empty on a Thursday afternoon. She could count 6 other tables with people at them. Nobody had asked any of those people for a card. "I have a reservation," she said. "Under what name?" "Lydia Voss." Craig's eyes moved just briefly to the small screen of the hostess station across the room, then back. "I don't see that in the system." Her daughter, Amara, was 8 years old and very still beside her. She had the particular stillness of a child who has learned that certain moments require it. She held a small beaded bracelet in both hands and turned it slowly, the way some people turn a rosary. "Mommy," she whispered. "Is something wrong with our table?" Lydia put one hand over her daughter's. "No, baby," she said. "Nothing's wrong with the table." She looked back at Craig Ellison. "I called ahead," she said. 3 days ago. The reservation is under Voss. You can check again." Craig did not check again. "Ma'am," he said, and the word came out with a particular flatness that was worse than if he had shouted it. "I think there may have been a miscommunication. We do have seating available in our casual dining area near the East Corridor. I'd be happy to have someone escort you there. It's more." He paused just long enough, relaxed. The East Corridor, near the kitchen entrance and the supply carts. The part of the hotel where the noise of things being cleaned never fully stopped. Lydia was wearing a dark wool coat over a plain navy dress. She had driven 4 hours from Ottawa that morning. Her hair was in a low bun. She wore no jewelry except a thin gold ring on her right hand. There was nothing about her, at first glance, that Craig Ellison had apparently decided warranted a table by the window. She had noticed this before. The way certain rooms sized you up in the first 3 seconds and assigned you a category. She had learned to be patient with it. She had also learned that patience and surrender were not the same thing. "I'd like to speak with the general manager," she said. Craig's jaw shifted slightly. "I am the acting manager on duty today. Then I'd like the name of the general manager." A pause. "That would be Mr. Fortescue, but he's unavailable. I'll wait." Craig looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at Amara. Then he looked back at Lydia with an expression that was almost sorry but wasn't quite. "I'm going to have to ask you to move to the East Corridor while you wait. I can't leave you in this section without verification." Lydia reached into her bag. She placed her phone face down on the table. She placed her water glass, already poured, already there when they sat down, because the hostess had seated them without any trouble, slightly to the left. She folded her hands. "I'll wait here," she said. Craig Ellison had worked at the Harwood Hotel in downtown Toronto for 11 years. He had started as a front desk associate and moved up, slowly, through the kind of institutional patience that rewards people who never cause trouble and never draw attention. He was good at the quiet management of problems. He did not like scenes. He did not like uncertainty. What he disliked most, he had come to understand, was when someone did not behave the way he expected them to. He walked back to the hostess station. He said something low and quick to the young woman there. Her name was Bethany. She had been working at the Harwood for 7 months, and she was already deeply uncomfortable with what was happening. She had been the one who seated Lydia and Amara. She had checked the system. Voss, party of 2, 12:30 p.m., window booth, it was right there. She had not understood why Craig was making an issue of it. She had not said this out loud. She was 23 and needed the job. Craig did not look at her when he came back. He picked up the desk phone and made a call. Across the dining room, Lydia watched him. She did not take out her phone. She poured a small glass of water for Amara from the carafe on the table and set it in front of her. "Are you hungry?" she asked. Amara nodded. "Can I have the pasta?" You can have whatever you want." Amara smiled. She had a gap where her left front tooth had been until last month. She was in the phase of smiling with her mouth slightly closed in photographs, which Lydia found heartbreaking in a small and specific way, because Amara was at an age when everything about her was still completely unguarded, and the gap was wonderful. "Mommy, why is that man angry?" Lydia considered this. She had given this answer before in different places, for different versions of the same situation. "He's not angry," she said. "He's confused." "About what?" "About who we are." Amara turned this over. "Should we tell him?" Lydia picked up the menu. "Let's order lunch first." The call Craig made was to hotel security. He spoke briefly to a man named Owen, who managed building security from a small office on the second floor. Owen had been at the Harwood for 9 years. He was careful and thorough, and he did not love this particular call, but he came down anyway. He stood at the edge of the dining room and looked at the two people Craig had described as a situation requiring verification. What he saw was a woman in a wool coat reading a menu and helping a child sound out a word she didn't know. He walked over to Craig. "That's the situation?" he said quietly. "She refuses to produce identification or a membership card, and she won't move to the East Corridor. Did she show you a reservation?" "She claims she has one. Does she?" Craig's mouth pressed together. "There's an entry in the system, but then she has a reservation, Craig. The protocol for this section is for guests who don't have reservations," Owen said. He kept his voice flat and professional. "She has a reservation. She's a paying guest. I'm not going to." He stopped. "I'm not going to do what you're describing. If you want to escalate this, you call Fortescue. That's above my clearance." Craig stared at him. "Fine," Craig said. "I'll handle it myself." Owen went back upstairs. He would think about that conversation for a long time afterward. He would think about the moment he walked away, and what it had cost, and what it would eventually cost Craig. Craig crossed the dining room again. Several other diners had begun to watch. An older couple near the window had put down their cutlery. A man in a business suit at the center table was looking at his phone, but not at his phone, the way people do when they are recording something. Craig stopped at Lydia's table. "Ma'am," he said, "I've spoken with security, and we are within our rights to ask unverified guests to relocate. If you're unable to provide a membership card or room key, I'll need you to come with me." Lydia looked up at him. She was 44 years old. She had grown up in Scarborough, the second of 4 children, in a house where the heat sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. She had put herself through law school on scholarships and weekend shifts at a print shop on Bloor Street. She had spent 14 years in federal practice, 7 of them in constitutional law, the last 5 in a role that required her to understand, very precisely, what power looked like when it was being exercised without justification. She picked up her phone from the table. She did not make a call. She sent an email, 3 sentences. It took her less than 30 seconds. She set the phone down again. "Mr. Ellison," she said, reading his name tag, "I have a confirmed reservation. I have been seated by your hostess. I have not been disruptive. I have not violated any policy you have cited to me, because you have not cited a specific policy. You have asked me to move to a less desirable location without cause." She paused. "If you call the police, that will be your decision. But I want you to understand clearly that I will not be moving." Craig looked at her for a long moment. Then he took out his own phone and made the call. Amara had decided on the pasta. She had also decided that she would like to draw while she waited, and so she had taken a small notebook from her backpack, the purple one with the elastic band, and she was drawing what appeared to be a horse standing in front of a very tall building. "What's the building?" Lydia asked. "It's this hotel," Amara said. "And the horse is visiting. Is the horse a guest?" Amara said very seriously. Lydia laughed. It was a real laugh, sudden and warm. The woman at the next table heard it and looked over and almost involuntarily smiled. The food, when it came, was brought by a young server named Theo, who had heard everything and was deeply embarrassed on behalf of his workplace. He set down the pasta and a small bread basket and a glass of apple juice and said, "Can I get you anything else?" in a voice that contained a genuine apology. "This is perfect," Lydia said. "Thank you." Amara was already twirling pasta. They were halfway through lunch when the 2 officers arrived. Constable Yoon and Constable Dalrymple had been dispatched from the division on King Street. They walked into the Harwood dining room in their winter jackets and stood for a moment getting their bearings. Craig met them near the door. He explained the situation in a low, efficient voice. Guest refusing to relocate. Won't provide identification. Causing a disruption. Constable Yoon looked around the dining room. What she saw was a woman eating lunch with a child. The room was quiet. Nobody appeared disrupted, except they walked over. "Good afternoon," Constable Yoon said. "Are you Lydia Voss?" "I am," Lydia said. She did not stand up. She set down her fork. "We received a call that there was a disturbance here." "There's no disturbance," Lydia said. "I have a reservation. I've been seated. I'm having lunch with my daughter." She looked at Craig, standing 2 feet behind the officers. "That man has asked me to move to a different part of the restaurant because I haven't produced a membership card. I don't have a membership card because I'm not a member. I'm a guest with a confirmed reservation." She paused. "The reservation is in the system. His own hostess can confirm it." Constable Yoon looked at Craig. "Is that accurate? There's a reservation on file?" Craig opened his mouth, closed it. "There is an entry, but what's the basis for the relocation request?" A silence. "Protocol for non-members in the... Is it posted policy?" Constable Dalrymple asked. He had been looking around the room while his partner spoke. He was looking for a sign, a printed notice, anything. "Is there a sign indicating this section requires membership?" There was no sign. There had never been a sign, because the Harwood's dining room was open to any guest with a reservation, and Craig Ellison had invented this version of the protocol in the last 40 minutes. Constable Yoon turned back to Lydia. "Ma'am, you're not being asked to leave by us. Is there anything you need?" "No," Lydia said. "I appreciate you coming," and she meant it, not sarcastically but genuinely. "I don't think this needs to be anything more than it already is." Constable Yoon nodded. She looked at Craig for a long moment. The look said several things, none of them kind. The officers left. Craig was still standing there when the dining room door opened again. The man who came through was 60 years old, heavy-set, wearing a charcoal suit and an expression like a man who had driven through a red light and was now dealing with the insurance call. His name was Walter Fortescue, and he was the general manager of the Harwood Hotel, and he had received 12 minutes ago a 3-sentence email that had made his face go very quiet. He walked past Craig without looking at him. He stopped at Lydia's table. "Mrs. Voss," he said. "Mr. Fortescue," she said. He did not sit down. He clasped his hands in front of him. His voice, when it came, was careful and low. "I received your message. I want to apologize personally for what has happened here today. There was no cause for this. None at all." "No," Lydia said. "There wasn't. I want to assure you that we will be conducting a full internal review, Mr. Fortescue." She said his name without sharpness but with a weight that made him stop. "That man called the police on me and my daughter while we were eating lunch. I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. We were not causing trouble. We were not loud. We were not in violation of any stated policy. He called the police." She paused. "My daughter is 8 years old." Walter Fortescue looked at Amara, who was looking back at him with the open, assessing gaze of a child who has not yet learned to pretend she isn't watching. He looked like a man who had just fully understood something he had been trying not to. "I know," he said quietly. "I know." Craig Ellison was in the hallway outside the dining room, waiting, when Walter Fortescue came out. He had prepared an explanation. He had a version of events that he had been arranging in his mind for the last 10 minutes. He led with protocol. He led with the ambiguity of the reservation system. He used the word discretion twice. Walter let him finish. Then he said simply, "You're suspended effective immediately, pending review." Craig stared. "Walter, HR will contact you today. Please surrender your access card to Bethany at the front desk." I was following procedure. The section policy clearly states, there is no section policy that authorizes what you did today. Walter's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You had a confirmed reservation on file. You had a seated guest with a child. You called the police. He paused. "On what basis, Craig?" The question sat there. Craig did not answer it, because the honest answer, the only real answer, was one he could not say out loud. "Your card," Walter said. "Please." Bethany was at the hostess station when Craig came to hand in his card. She took it without speaking. Her hands were very steady. After he left, she stood for a moment looking at the card in her palm. Then she went back to the dining room. She stopped at Lydia's table. "I'm sorry," she said. It came out before she had quite decided to say it. "I checked the reservation when you came in. It was there. It was always there." "I should have." She stopped. "I don't know what I should have done differently, but I'm sorry." Lydia looked at her. The girl was young. She was shaking slightly. "You didn't do anything wrong," Lydia said. "I know that. I should have said something to him." "Maybe," Lydia said. "But that's hard when someone has power over you. You'll know better next time." She paused. "There's always a next time." Bethany nodded. She looked like she might cry. She went back to the desk. Amara had finished her pasta. She was drawing again. "Who was that lady?" she asked. "Someone who felt bad. Did you forgive her?" Lydia thought about this. There wasn't much to forgive. She was scared. Were you scared? Lydia looked at her daughter. The beaded bracelet was back on her wrist now, purple and yellow and green, the colors Amara had picked herself at a market on a Saturday in October. "No," Lydia said. "Not really, because you knew you were right?" "Partly," she said, "and partly because I had you with me." Amara considered this with great seriousness. Then she went back to her horse drawing. What Craig Ellison did not know, and what Walter Fortescue had understood in the first 7 seconds of reading Lydia's email, was this. Lydia Voss was a justice of the Federal Court of Canada. She had been appointed 4 years ago after 2 decades in federal practice. Her file was public record. Her name appeared in decisions that had been cited in appellate courts across the country. She had ruled on charter challenges, on immigration matters, on constitutional questions that had shaped policy in ways most Canadians would never trace back to any single person. She was not famous. She did not appear on television. She drove a practical car and wore sensible shoes, and sometimes helped her daughter with the zipper on a coat that always stuck. She had not told Craig who she was, not because she needed him to know, not because she was waiting to use it, but because it shouldn't have mattered. That was the whole point. That had always been the whole point. You should not have to explain your worth to someone who has decided, in the first 3 seconds, that you have none. The formal complaint was filed the following week. It named Craig Ellison specifically. It named the Harwood Hotel. It documented the reservation confirmation, the relocation request, the security involvement, the police call, and the absence of any posted or enforceable policy that could have justified any of it. It also named briefly the moment Amara had asked if something was wrong with their table, because that detail mattered, because children absorb what they witness, because the cost of what Craig Ellison had done was not only the 40 minutes of that afternoon, it was the thing Amara would carry with her. The knowledge, learned too young, that some people will look at you and see a problem before they have exchanged a single word with you. That knowledge lives in you. It changes how you walk into rooms. Lydia had it. She knew exactly when she had learned it. She remembered the specific room. She did not want that for her daughter. That was the part she did not write in the complaint. That part was not for the record. The Harwood Hotel issued a public statement. It acknowledged the incident. It announced that Craig Ellison's employment had been terminated following the review. It stated that the hotel had retained an equity consulting firm to audit its front-of-house practices and train all staff on non-discriminatory service protocols. It offered a formal written apology to Ms. Voss and her daughter. The statement used the word unacceptable 3 times. It used the word commitment twice. Lydia read it once and did not read it again. She was not unforgiving. She had spent her career thinking carefully about justice, about what it required, about the difference between punishment and accountability. She understood that institutions changed slowly, and that public statements were sometimes the first step and sometimes the last one, and it was hard to know in advance which kind you were looking at. What she knew was this. Walter Fortescue had come to that table himself. He had not sent an assistant. He had stood there and looked at her daughter and understood what he was looking at. She thought that might be worth something. She hoped it was. Owen, the security officer who had refused to carry out Craig's request, was later cited in the hotel's internal review as having acted with appropriate professional judgment. He received a formal commendation. He accepted it without much comment. He had done what seemed obvious to him. He still thought about the moment he had walked away, the moment he had left Lydia sitting there, not intervening further, not saying to Craig more clearly what he had seen. He thought about it the way you think about the thing you did right and wonder if you did enough. Bethany stayed at the Harwood. She was promoted to front desk associate 8 months later. She never again looked the other way when she saw something happening that she knew was wrong. She became, over time, the kind of person who says something that cost her occasionally. It also gave her a kind of solidity that she had not had before, the particular stability of someone who knows what they stand for when the moment arrives and has already decided. Amara finished the drawing of the horse and the hotel. She showed it to her mother in the car on the way home. The horse was standing very straight in front of the building, with a briefcase in one hoof. "That's a professional horse," Lydia said. "She's a judge," Amara said. Lydia looked at her daughter. "Horses can be judges." "In my drawing they can," Amara said, in the tone of someone explaining something very simple. Lydia looked back at the road. She was smiling. The kind of smile that doesn't need anything. "Fair enough," she said. "The thing about dignity is that it isn't something other people can give you." Craig Ellison tried to take something from Lydia Voss that afternoon in the Harwood dining room, tried to reduce her, to relocate her, to make her justify her presence in a room she had every right to occupy. He could not do it, not because she outranked him, not because she sent an email, because she did not hand him the power to make her feel small. She finished helping her daughter with the zipper first. She ordered the pasta. She laughed at the horse drawing. She knew who she was before she walked in, and that is something no one can take a table from. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of someone you know, or something you've seen, or something you've felt, let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you believe that dignity doesn't depend on a membership card, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, hold your ground.